This is Viterbi Voices, the podcast, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more directly from our faculty, students, and other members of the engineering community here at the University of Southern California.
This is episode 116. Tune in for a great conversation on the 2019 Min Family Social Entrepreneurship Challenge.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. This is episode
116.
116. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Rhea Chowdhury. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering here at USC.
And my name is Audrey Roberts, and I'm a sophomore studying mechanical engineering here
Audrey,
at USC.
welcome back.
Thank you.
And this particular episode, you bring us one of your really cool new things.
Yes.
What do you got for us today?
Yes, so this is the second episode in our new Engineering Impact series, which focuses on engineering for social good at USC. So this one is about a super cool class that started at USC this year, Civil Engineering 499, which is special topics, innovation and engineering design for global challenges.
Cool.
And it's part of the Min Family Challenge, which is a social entrepreneurship challenge that happens annually at USC. But this year it took the form of this class. So students in this class had the opportunity to, over a year, work on kind of like human-centered design and innovating to create a product to help alleviate problems that refugees face in Lesbos, Greece. Mm-hmm. And they actually took 2 trips to Lesbos as part of this class.
Because there's a refugee camp there in Lesbos, Greece.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Wow, so 2 different trips.
Yeah.
What was some of their biggest takeaways if they went on this trip? Like, what was it like?
I think that trip was honestly kind of life-changing for a lot of these students, just because, I mean, it's such a big contrast to like the way we live life here, and then to go in to a place where, you know, there's so many people and the conditions aren't great. And I think it was really like harrowing for a lot of these students, but at the same time, like essential to the development of like their product or innovation to help people, because it is really focused on like getting to know the user and identifying different needs. So I think it was transformative personally for people, but also transformative for the different products.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that we've talked about this a lot, not on the podcast, but this idea of this class has gone through kind of waves of emotions.
Yeah.
And that naturally, like, first of all, this is an incredibly large societal problem, the ideas of the refugee crisis. And engineers coming at it somewhat idealistically, like, we can create a product and solve it, or just like at least help to solve it, and then getting there and diving into the problem and realizing that no one thing is going to actually solve this crisis, because it is geopolitical in nature. Right. It's got a lot of other issues, but hopefully, so it's kind of heartbreaking that like, we're going to go do things and make a difference, and then realize like, it's not going to make a huge difference, but it might make a little of an impact, and that's still a positive impact. Is that kind of what's been happening with our students doing that? Yeah,
I think one of the students I talked to, he kind of summed that up in a really great way. He said kind of the same thing, like, you know, this is really a political problem, and as an engineer, it's hard because we want to come in and solve everything, but he was like, ultimately he'd realize that like any like incremental move in the positive direction is like
still positive.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's been challenging for them because these are just like huge, they call them wicked problems in these classes.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, in my normal classes, it's like I get a problem set, and the expectation is at the end of that, I solve the problem, right? And like you can't do this with that. So I think it's important at the same time to get this as an undergrad, because in reality, like really any engineering problem has no one clear-cut solution.
Right.
But that's especially true for this, because it's not an engineering problem necessarily.
Yeah. But hopefully engineering can provide some positive traction.
Yeah.
At least towards
I
that.
think it's one of the first classes on campus, too, that really provides a large-scale scope of where engineers fit into the entire world ecosystem of problems. Like, again, it's really easy to get narrowed down, even within like industry and things. Like, we work as engineers to solve these specific problems here and there, but engineers have the ability to contribute to other things that we don't really think about. And that can be problems like this, like the refugee crisis and things like that. I like that a lot, actually, that any little move in the positive is positive overall.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it was important for them to have that mindset too, especially when traveling to Greece, because it's like, oh my gosh, like how can we help this, you know, especially as like really young people who, you know, and it's an interdisciplinary course too. So there's maybe 1 or 2 engineers on a team, some business majors, like international relations, whoever, which is another great part of it. But I think for me at least, I was like, oh my gosh, how is this not the most overwhelming thing ever? But a lot of them said too that like by focusing on like the people and meeting them and really identifying their needs, it felt like a little more digestible. Like, wow, I can like help this person through this, not like this behemoth problem.
Adjust the scope of the problem.
Exactly.
Right. So our problem is not the refugee crisis. Our problem is solving this element as a result of the refugee crisis, and how can we figure out what we can do in this little entity.
Right. So some examples were like one of the problems was like safe shower spaces or having just kind of like basic goods. Like
inside the camps.
Yeah. So I think everyone did a really good job of kind of narrowing in on specific issues that they could tackle. Yeah. Which is cool.
Well, this is great, and this is a great addition to your impact series, and so I'm really appreciative of you bringing this to us and showing how engineers can have an impact. And your last one was on artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, it was on Case++.
Case++, and that's gotten a lot of listens in regard, like I think 3 or 4 times the amount of listens that another episode around the same time has. So that's phenomenal. So your series on impact is having a great impact. So
glad to hear it.
A lot of prospective students and current students all want to know how engineers can really make a really positive difference. Because all the engineers here, I think, want to solve bigger problems.
Right. I mean, I think it's something we're like constantly thinking about as students, and it's like, you know, on one side stressful, but then on the other hand, you like look around, and especially at USC, and people are finding cool ways to make this little positive shift in the right direction. Right? Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm excited to get into this episode. But before we do, I wanted to do one other thing, and Rhea doesn't know this. So Rhea's almost gone.
So sad.
I'm pretty aware of this, Paul.
I'm sorry. So we've got only a couple weeks left with you.
Yeah.
And then I don't have a co-host.
Yeah.
Audrey, would you be my co-host as we move on to the next year of the podcast?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I want to officially offer you Rhea's position.
I don't think I could ever fill Rhea's shoes, though.
That's completely false. You've already done that and more. So I'm so
also
excited.
Not true.
So you in?
Yeah.
You ready to take it over?
Yeah, I will have to learn a lot more before.
There's a lot of work to do.
It's okay. I like podcasting. It's fun.
Cool. So that's it. It is official.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
So as we'll start transitioning around over the next couple weeks, and Rhea will start passing the torch.
Microphone.
Yeah, pass the microphone. I think we'll have an official, I don't know, episode related to it or something. But I wanted to offer it to you on the air, so that's yours.
Gosh. Thank you. I'm so excited. Oh, this is like simultaneously really sad because, of course, I love Rhea. And I'm sure everyone who listens to the podcast does too.
I know. We should have. we need to have like call-in features of people wishing Rhea goodbye. We should set up like a voicemail for people who leave messages that we can record out.
Inflate my ego a little bit more before I leave. Congratulations, Audrey. That's so awesome.
Wow.
So, cool. I'm excited. All right. Well, let's get out of the way and get back into your episode on the Civil Engineering 499 class.
In the second installment of our Engineering Impact Series, we discussed the 2019 Min Family Challenge, an annual social entrepreneurship challenge within the Viterbi School, sponsored by the Min family. This year, the challenge takes the form of the course CE 499, Innovation in Engineering Design for Global Challenge, which is a civil engineering course open to all undergraduates. For the class, students work in teams, learning about human-centered design, research methodologies, and innovation strategies to ultimately create a product that can help alleviate some of the challenges associated with the global refugee crisis. While developing their products, students had the opportunity to travel to Lesbos, Greece, in order to become familiar with the lives of refugees and test and implement solutions. First, I spoke to mechanical engineering student Sienna Applebaum, who explains the course.
So I'm Sienna Applebaum, and I'm a junior majoring in mechanical engineering.
Sienna is part of the team We Wash, which created a portable, clean, and safe shower for refugees.
So the class, I think it's technically called Innovation and Engineering Design for Global Challenges. This year the challenge being Innovating for the Refugee Crisis. And essentially what the class is we're broken up into teams of about 5 to 6 students, and we're tasked with coming up with an innovation that helps alleviate the problems experienced by refugees. We kind of particularly focused on refugees in Greece, and that's just because through the class, in order to do user research, we went, as a class, half of us went in the beginning of the year in September to visit Lesbos, Greece, and to visit the refugee camps there, specifically Karatepe and Moria, and just gain a better understanding of what type of problems people experience and what life is like, or just a snippet of what life could be like. And then the remainder of our class went to do user testing once we already came up with products this semester in, I think, February. So yeah, we're, I guess, 5 teams. We're all working on very, very different problems. My team in particular, one thing we noticed was the problem of hygiene and how these shower houses in refugee camps that we experienced, the shower houses were often communal, often mixed-gendered, and they became synonymous with sexual assault and with violence and with the proliferation of disease. And so in an attempt to kind of prevent the need to even have to go to these shower houses, we designed a low-cost, easy-to-assemble, kind of like pop-up shower. So every family living in a tent or an ISO box could have their own small, contained, private shower that would be their own with like a strong lock, because that's another thing is in the communal showers, most of the showers don't even have locks, and that contributes to the situation in there. And I think kind of our goal is, as well as to prevent the dangers associated with these communal shower blocks and protect residents, on top of giving people a greater sense of privacy. I think it's also important that after many refugees that are coming to Europe have left their home countries, they've traveled for months, oftentimes through pathways through Turkey, and they've left everything behind. And I think it's important also to give people a sense of ownership, just over something that they can own for themselves, like a private shower. I think that contributes to people's self-worth, like self-confidence, like mental state, and just like their sense of dignity of after having lost anything to just have some semblance of normality, and just adding to any spaces where they can feel comfortable, because I think it's a situation where nothing is comfortable, and there's threat and like confusion coming from all sides. So that's just also part of what we're trying to fight.
We Wash's product has evolved over the year, but ultimately arrived at an easily assemblable shower enclosure for refugees.
It's morphed so much over the past 2 semesters. Like, I think we've at some stage attacked it and approached it from like every single way it could be attacked, or like we've seen in so many different versions. What our final product has arrived at is it's a collection of panels. They come in a flat pack kit. Yeah, so they can be assemblable just using wood joints, because we use just like wood joinery techniques. So no tools, no fasteners are required. And these panels are made of just treated plywood, so the goal is to ensure that they're cut in a water jet or CNC shop local to whatever camp they're delivered to, and that just saves on shipping costs and contributes to the local economy.
The team identified well in Lesbos the type of preferred shower for refugees.
So one thing we found when we were there and talking to our refugee partners while we were back at USC is that a lot of people that we spoke to just use bucket showers, which is where you take your own water and you use a mug to shower yourself. And they would use Western showers, like what we're accustomed to with water coming down, but oftentimes they felt more comfortable just using a bucket shower because they said that's what they did at home, and they didn't seem to have much of a preference. And so in order to save on costs and to improve simplicity and just have fewer moving parts, because as we saw, everything that could be broken would be broken pretty immediately, we decided to transition to just having people bring in their own water in a bucket and do bucket showering.
So it's kind of like just an enclosure then.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
An elevated enclosure that has like a drainage underneath it.
Beyond research done at home, Sienna finds that the experience of going to Greece was central to the success of the course.
The class would be completely different without that experience. I think we started out, it feels like so long ago, but in the first couple weeks before we went, we started out with all this ideation, and then half of us went to Greece and we came back and we were like, all of that was wrong. Like, everything we thought was completely irrelevant. It was probably one of the craziest 10-day experiences of my life, which I think sounds a little silly and cheesy, but it was a lot to experience at once. I think it was both like incredibly inspiring and incredibly impactful, incredibly positive, but also, it was really upsetting. But I think it's so important that we were able to go, because it's foolish to try to design something for people without having any concept of what life could be like for them. I think it's like it's almost like egotistical to think that you could design something better than they could, or you can just impose what you think they need without considering what their opinions are about what they need, because obviously the user knows best what's lacking. And so I think it was a really, really important experience.
Getting the experience of what life would be like in Lesbos helped the team think about engineering problems contextually.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of the class, is putting our engineering skills, or, it's an interdisciplinary class in some sense, just like any of our skills, to a context that benefits others, which is really, it comes down to it. That's like what the purpose of engineering is. It's to use art, like science and math and technical skills, to solve problems. So I think that's just such a valuable part of that class. I think it's also really important that our professors are really conscious of taking us through this design journey that is centered on the user and centered on user experience, because that's really how you get to the most pressing problems, is putting yourself as much as you can into the shoes of the user, and really trying to identify the root of the problems, and not identify symptoms, but identify problems that really do exist, and pain points that you can address. So I think a lot of that stuff that I learned, a lot of that, like, kind of trying to go through step by step the user journey, I think that's a skill, and that's just like a headspace that I'll use throughout the rest of my life, and hopefully throughout the rest of my engineering career, to better inform my choices and better inform my design choices and my perception of what real problems exist.
Going to Greece and then returning to campus was valuable, but also challenging at times.
It really, it was also weird just, coming back from the airport and, like, seeing my friends that were just, like, they just kind of thought, like, I had left school randomly for 2 weeks. It was weird that, like, life had continued there, whereas to me everything felt so different and my perspective felt so changed, and I felt like my opinions on what I was doing and just my perception of the world was so different from when I had left. I remember feeling so stupid. Like, I remember being so excited to leave because I had no idea what was going to happen and what it was going to be like, and then coming back and being like, yeah, I just could never have been prepared for what the experience was like.
The complexity of the problem and its impact on various communities was truly eye-opening to the team and important in the product's development.
Something that was really interesting to see, I think, is we were so focused on this population of innocent people that are fleeing for their lives, and then getting no assistance where they flee, and in fact sometimes conditions potentially could be even worse where they're going, and the violence and the danger is just as prevalent where they're going as where they're coming from. I don't know if I can say that, but it's like a terrible situation. But then this perspective that I think a lot of us hadn't considered before is that it's not easy for anyone. It's not easy for the residents of the Lesbos island either. It's not easy for the residents of the host communities that that suddenly had their lives change because a lot of people were fleeing and arrived in their homes. So I think just this a little bit more of an understanding of like the duality and the intense complexity of the problem was also really, really eye-opening to see.
Ultimately, the team had to reconcile the fact that this problem has no clear-cut solution.
And understanding that maybe the biggest or the best solutions to the crisis aren't even engineering solutions. I think there's a lot of different ways to think about that. One is that, it opened my mind a little bit more. I think, Dean Yortzos always talks about engineering plus, and I think it opened a lot of our minds to just the fact that, you need to be a competent engineer, and I'm excited to use my engineering skills in order to help solve problems. But I think it reminds you that, even though I think engineering is the best field and it enables so many disciplines, you also need those other disciplines, and you need to be able to be conscious of policy and just like different factors outside of engineering and be able to integrate those two together. And I think, none of them can exist in a silo. You need to be working on the policy and working on, the business, and also working on the engineering problem solving. So I think it opened our minds to that, and I think that's another really valuable thing is because the class is so interdisciplinary and because we were on teams with international relations majors and business majors, we were able to gain a much better perspective on what was going on than if we were all in, from a siloed field.
Right.
I think it was also interesting, kind of something you touched on, was exactly like in engineering classes, I think, it's easier to just arrive on one clear cut solution by optimizing all of the different factors, trying to provide the most functionality. But in this situation where there's so many unknown variables, and like I mentioned, anything that can break will break, you also have to be conscious of so many other dimensions where maybe even if this will add a lot of value, it's really easy to break, and potentially that's a bigger disadvantage than providing the benefit, because maybe, okay, but in 2 weeks this will have broken off.
While it could be challenging to work in teams of people from various backgrounds, it was beneficial for Sienna's team to have people from a handful of majors in and outside of engineering.
I think any teamwork is sometimes a little bit hard, but it was so cool, and I think so beneficial to have interdisciplinary teams. Even just working between Viterbi majors. My team is a social entrepreneurship major, a business major, a biomedical engineering major, and a civil engineering major. And I think it was really interesting just being able to combine our different perspectives and our different viewpoints, understand the different skills that we had. I think we all approach problems, I think maybe also just the people we are, but also because of our educational histories. We all approach problems really differently, and the problems we see with solutions are all really different, and I think we come at things from very different angles, and that's really, really cool. I think I grew a lot from that experience. I think it's really beneficial, and I think that was also really important when we were in that ideation phase and talking about the problems and in talking about what, and trying to identify pain points, because I think I could really see that people from different backgrounds have different experiences and view things really differently. And that was really, really cool. Because in the real world, you are in multidisciplinary teams.
The experience of starting with the user was incredibly valuable for Sienna and helped her realize that she would ultimately like to incorporate this kind of work into her career.
Oh, there's so many things that were really valuable. It was also, it's been so much of my headspace for the last year of my life that it's hard to, I don't even remember not working. I do, but, for so long, it's occupied so much of my mentality, and it's been such a big part of my life that it's it's almost hard to just, like, reflect on from outside. But I think a lot of things were really important. I think one thing that will really carry through with me for a really long time is the experience with starting from the user and with remembering who you're designing for and trying to walk through the user journey. I think that experience of, like, designing for a user is so important and such an important experience to have. And I think that perspective and that mentality, no matter where I end up in life, will always be something that colors my choices, informs my perspective, because I think that was really, really impactful. I think also I think this was a reminder of how important this topic is for me and how important human rights is for me, and how much I think I need to make sure that is part of my career as I move forward. And I don't really know what that will look like, but even for this class, I could never have imagined that a class like this would exist. So even though I don't know what my future career will look like, that doesn't mean that there isn't some intersection where I can combine like the problems that I want to solve with the technical capability that I have. So I think that's another way that it's really impacted me. Yeah, but I think it's also been such a benefit to me in, it's my junior year, mechanical engineering. I think it's a time where you can get really caught up with just, like, all of your technical engineering classes, and it's been so important to me that although I can just be stressed with, okay, like, my heat transfer homework, my my mech ops report, it's also important, which, I'm learning so much from, but it's also important that every day I'm taken away from that and I'm reminded of the problems that affect other people.
And, like, the value that engineering can have.
Exactly.
In solving these.
Yeah, that I think is so, so important. I think it took a lot of us back to why we decided to be engineers. Like I mentioned, engineering is just using our technical skills and using problem solving to solve problems. So it really takes you back to, like, these are some problems that are worthy problems to try to use your skills to solve. And, you can't solve them, but to help with. But I just wanted to thank our incredible professors, Brad and Burchin and David, and the man that made this happen, Dan. It was like his vision to have this class that would help with a problem like this. We're so, so thankful for them, and we're so thankful that they enabled us to be part of this experience. And also all of the sponsors for this class, we wouldn't have been able to do anything like this without them. So I think we're all so incredibly appreciative to have been given the resources and the opportunity to be part of this.
Next, I spoke with Camila from Team Firefly, which is making highly functional, low-cost, sustainable clothing with features designed specifically for emergency response scenarios.
Okay, so my name is Camila. I'm a junior studying civil engineering with an emphasis in building sciences. So I'm on Team Firefly. We're focused on, essentially we position ourselves as a brand, a clothing brand, and we focus on high quality, high functioning, but low cost outerwear and innerwear. I guess just clothing for refugees. So our first product is an undergarment that has special compartments for your legal documents. So a lot of refugees carry around their old passports or their asylum papers and application papers. So we have an undergarment that has special locations for that so they can keep them safe at all times. As well as we carefully chose the material so that it's good for winter and summer. So it adds another layer of either warmth or it cools you off by wicking off the sweat. And my team is very collaborative. So we have majors from, obviously, engineering. We have Josh, who is a chemical engineer. Myself, I'm a civil engineer. Monique, who's from the Iovine and Young Academy, and she has an interdisciplinary major. And then we have 2 business majors as well. So that really helps us because we each take on a little bit of a different role in the team. So it helps us really develop our product and our brand as a full package.
Camila found the human aspect of visiting Greece and the ability to connect with people very valuable.
Our team, there's 2 trips to Greece. There was one, it's a year-long class. So there was a trip in the fall semester and a trip in the spring semester. The fall semester was at the beginning of the semester, so it was more of a understanding of what the problems were and what we could focus on in our product. And I went on the first trip, not the second trip. The second trip was more testing of our product and getting feedback to refine the product. So from my experience, I have a lot of mixed feelings because it's kind of unfair to say that I learned so much from this and then I get to come back here and just have a normal life and go back to school and go back to my classes and kind of obviously work towards the issue, but for a lot of people that's their reality. So having that awareness of other people's reality was really critical in defining a problem, but it was also incredibly hard because you come back here and how do you do a fluid dynamics homework problem when there's people out there in Greece that are actually really suffering and are going through all these things, and you actually saw this firsthand. So you kind of feel this need and this call to action to really try to help. So I think that was my main takeaway from the trip, and also we identified certain problem areas that were really obvious. So we went in September and a lot of their focus and kind of worries were on warmth and being prepared for the winter. So that's how we settled on the idea of warmth, and we kind of ideated from there. We thought about shelter solutions. We thought about maybe different things that we can create to help warmth, maybe some sort of personal heating device. And then we finally settled on clothing and creating the best thermal properties through like the mixture of wool and polyester and all these things to create the best kind of clothing for refugees.
This human aspect of the course is part of what's most valuable for Camila. The problems the teams are trying to solve aren't textbook problems. Rather, they are complex and involve the lives of people. Ultimately, she sees potential in their work to do good in this area, but recognizes what still needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the benefit of one of the largest benefits of a course like this is you're not just solving a problem from a textbook and you solve the problem, you get the right answer, and then that's it, you turn it in. It's actually very human and very focused on real issues in the world. And I think that it's important for all of us to start thinking of how we can actually help and create solutions for these kind of things, because if we want to, if we want the school to create engineers that are going to go and actually tackle these problems in the real world, we should start teaching how to do that from the beginning and in your education. And I think that that's what's really valuable. I think a lot of what the issues there is or something that I'm hesitant about is I don't want to make it seem like we're the martyrs in some sort of storyline or that we're actually like some sort of hero or something, because it's not true. Like, we're all going to fail. We're going to learn from that failure, and it's going to make us better designers and better engineers and actually help us come up with solutions that can actually tackle these problems later on. I think a lot of the products have a potential and have a future, and I think it's really incredible what we've been able to do. But I think there's also a long way to go.
In school, and at our age in particular, we are used to solving somewhat isolated problems. So when a problem is so multidisciplinary and so large, how can we, as engineers, begin to tackle them? For Camila, this process is about applying skill sets in unconventional ways.
I don't think we know yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely interesting to see all these factors that push and pull people away from a country or towards a country. And I actually, this class made me kind of think of, there's so many different like modeling softwares for natural disasters, like flood analysis or earthquake analysis. I think it'd be really interesting to make some sort of software that analyzes human flow depending on different like political factors or environmental factors or whatever, because I think there the refugee crisis is only going to increase, especially with environmental refugees, as climate change happens and some areas of the country become unlivable. So I don't know. I think that's something that's been really interesting, like thinking of those different factors. And I think it'd be interesting to find a way to model this as some sort of planning tool for cities and countries and things like that. That's not what my product is for this class, but it's something that, you know, maybe a PhD student could do as a thesis or things like that. So it's made me think a lot about how we can solve these issues in maybe unconventional ways.
While working in any sort of team can be challenging, Camila's team found a good workflow where they are productive and learn from each other.
Yeah, so I think at the beginning it was a lot more fluid. It was just all of us coming together, trying to prototype quickly and think of, you know, like how we can test different things that we wanted to figure out. I think it's definitely split up kind of like our roles based off of our major, not on purpose. Like, we welcome anyone to do anything that they're interested in, but it just kind of, that's where our expertise kind of lies. So Josh, who's the chemical engineer, he became really useful in understanding all the thermal properties of the fabrics. Me, I'm a civil engineer, and I consider myself a builder. I've taken on kind of the role of quickly prototyping things, like putting things together easily, and like that's something that I think about a lot in my head, how materials can come together and like maybe how we can, you know, make the button system on the shirt better. Like, is it zippers or is it all these systems that go into how they can come together to work the best? Monique she's actually really interested in the convergence of technology and fashion. So she has a really big expertise on the fashion industry that has been really useful. And because of all of this knowledge that we have from different areas, we've been able to, I think, come up with a really cool product that has a lot of the things that we were looking for to actually help refugees and like give them the best product for them. But yeah, I think definitely everyone's taken on kind of the role that their major sets them out to be once they graduate.
Guess that's good, right?
Yeah, which is interesting. But at the same time, like, there's no civil engineering in this project, but I've taken the different skills that I've learned from my building science classes to be able to like create physical models of what we're doing. Or I think you apply everything that you learn in your classes, but direct it in a different way, which is interesting. Like, I don't think Josh knew that when he was taking organic chemistry that he would use it to like understand which cotton fabric is better or like which cotton weaving is like more warm.
Right.
So I think that that's super interesting, how you can apply all of these things that you learn in your classes can be applied in really unique ways that you wouldn't really expect them to. I don't think it's hard because of all of us coming from different disciplines. I think what's been a little more challenging is just personality differences, which is bound to happen in any group setting. But I think when you work with any group, there's some sort of like flow state that just clicks sometimes, and like you're all super productive, and sometimes you're not as productive or for whatever. And I think that it's all about coming with an open mind of everyone's different types of backgrounds and like finding that little system or that like level of collaboration or who's good at what that like helps you come to this like steady flow state that like moves you on.
Right.
So I think with any group there's like obviously group dynamics to work around, and it's always an opportunity to learn from other people.
Ultimately, the class was valuable for Camila because it taught her to take on a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, so the most valuable thing, I mentioned it before, is just being able to think about, honestly, like being exposed to all of like the reality of the world pretty much and actually trying to think of ways that we play a part in it and how we can affect it in positive ways. And I think that that's like the most valuable part, just being able to learn about the reality of the world and kind of teach us the sense of responsibility.
Finally, I spoke with Duet, a micro-philanthropy platform that facilitates donations from international donors to resettled refugees through local businesses.
Hi, my name is Spence. I'm a sophomore studying business administration and design from Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Reese. I'm a sophomore studying biomedical engineering, and I'm from Portland, Oregon.
Hey, my name's Lucas. I'm a junior studying CS, and I'm from Palo Alto, California.
Hi, I'm Raghav. I'm also a junior studying computer science, and I'm from Zug, Switzerland.
Hello, I'm Michael. I'm studying business and international relations. I'm a senior, and I'm from London, England.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with kind of the problem we wanted to tackle, and that's, I think, one thing we noticed when we went to the refugee camps was that there are a lot of items being donated that didn't necessarily match what they actually needed. So a lot of the times, people will need things like men's underwear, whereas, say, like, children's toys were the things that were actually getting donated. So what we wanted to do was to work with local stores to provide items that refugees really need. And to do that, it's been quite a logistical challenge, but it's been pretty fun making it work. It's really come together in a pretty successful way so far. So, yeah, I'm hoping that keeps up.
Yeah, I think we realised a couple of things as we went along as well. A few other sort of simultaneous challenges that we could address to try and create more of a complete product. One of the things we ran into as well were when we think about who likes to donate items or donate anything really to any kind of philanthropic initiative, we found that actually creating this transparent connection centered around donating an item was actually quite attractive, and creating a whole system where it was very clear where your money was going, it was very clear the impact you were having, and actually some sort of connection was made between the donor and the refugee. We felt that was also solving sort of the donor end as well. A few things that we thought were maybe not fantastic about the current non-profit, workings in the US at least. One of the other things that came up pretty late on actually was the potential impact we could have on the local community that weren't refugees. So, for example, in one of the towns very near one of the refugee camps we visited, over the last 3 years, they went from having something like 57 stores to less than 5. And, in 3 years to have that kind of economic degradation is pretty brutal for any local communities. And the fact that we're providing aid, both through items to refugees, but also through revenue to these local stores, we found has actually been pretty cool in terms of the response we're getting from them.
The Local Stores initiative was an important part of the development of Duet, as the team originally envisioned their product as an Amazon-based platform, but ultimately found it valuable to source donations from local stores.
So definitely, the original idea came forth kind of with matching with Amazon or doing some sort of delivery process. And I remember actually Michael came up with the idea of the Local Stores initiative, and then pretty much immediately we shot it down because we thought that it would just be a huge logistical challenge in terms of we would have to know the inventory of the local stores. We would have to speak to people in different countries with different languages. Translation would be an issue. And then actually this semester, so in early February when we went to Lesbos with the class, we touched down and we kind of thought, what of our product can we test? We were still thinking about going through Amazon or doing some sort of shipping thing, and then when we landed on the ground, we thought, why not just try the local stores thing and go in, see if this model could work. And we were super surprised with the response that we got of how willing store owners were willing to work with us, talk to us about how they did inventory, communicate with us over email, and then also it was super helpful. A lot more people spoke English than we thought. So that has allowed us to really facilitate the local stores part of our model, and we're super happy to return to it because we do think it is part of that total solution in terms of the refugee crisis is a multifaceted issue. It's not just people being displaced from their homes, but it's also the people who, the receiving communities, the way that they have to deal with this massive amount of influx of people and the ripple effects that it causes.
Yeah, and I think going to Lesbos and being on the ground was really, really important for us because we learned things that we could have never learned just staying in LA and trying to do research from here. For example, when we interviewed refugee families, we found out that most of them don't have a permanent address or some, sort of address that we could use for like a delivery sort of service or using Amazon. And so we quickly had to almost rethink how are we going to get these items into the hands of families. And having the incredible opportunity to be in Lesbos and to kind of see the situation firsthand gave us the confidence to go talk to local stores and really rethink what the model can be for Duet. And so I think that's been really like amazing to see and to really have that feedback in person has been super important for our team.
Awesome. Was that kind of a spur of the moment thing to go to the local stores? Were you guys planning on doing that before you went to Greece?
So I remember in the discussions leading up to us going to Lesbos for the second time, I actually went on the first trip. So we were approaching our second semester, and the professors were kind of, asking, how is this going to work? And I think there's a pretty clear divide between, Amazon route and local stores. Michael may have been the only one still headstrong on local stores. So yeah, we went into it really like open to either idea and just kind of going in with an honest mind and seeing what the opportunity was. And I think that was the best way to go because, we knew what our options were. And as soon as we saw that opportunity, we met the first store and they were receptive, then we wanted to attack that and, see if that opportunity was real.
Michael, another member of the Duet team, emphasized the importance of being on the ground in Lesbos to develop their product.
I mean, I think it was incredibly harrowing. I don't think, especially in the first semester, I was lucky enough to go on both trips. Especially in the first semester, I don't think we really, as a cohort, were prepared for what we were about to step into. It truly is an awful situation that you can't really understand unless you're there. And even when you arrive, it's sort of surreal, and it takes a couple of days for the true nature of it to really sink in, because you can meet people and you can have normal conversations, and it takes a while for you to realize that there's a lot under the surface that you don't realize, that pictures can't capture, that writing can't capture. It really is the feeling of being there. And at least for me, I was a different person afterwards. Leaving, I was completely different from when I arrived. Remember getting back and having a test coming up and thinking it was the least significant thing in the entire world. There was a lot of readjusting what I thought was right and important and okay, and true nature of the world. Those kind of levels of questions and challenges that I think we faced, especially on the first trip, because we really weren't expecting it. The second trip, it was still more of the same. There's just a complete limit to how much you can prepare for it. But it was better, I think, the second time around. We were given a little bit more sort of emotional training, and we had conversations with psychiatrists as soon as we arrived, who were able to give us more, at least, of a like the theory behind some of the things some of the psychological conditions we were about to face, and I think that was very helpful. In terms of how it's impacted our product, we've already spoken about it. It was make or break. I think we wouldn't have anywhere near a successful idea unless we'd gone. You can't do this kind of work without being with your users and without being on the ground. I think about even how much better our product might be if we'd gone 4 times instead of twice. It completely accelerates learning. It answers questions at a quicker rate than anything else. It set things straight for us multiple times. It's a linchpin on which this class sits.
I think another big takeaway for me was just how complex the situation was once you're actually immersed in its reality. I think from here, it's easy to posit solutions that you think might help. And then once you get there, you kind of realize there maybe are really good reasons why that hasn't been implemented or why it's really difficult to implement. So I remember they were talking about some people from, I think it was Harvard, who visited one of the camps and tried to formulate something along the lines of handing out food as an optimization problem or something like that. And they're saying, you're doing this all wrong. You can make this so much more efficient. But then you think about like the actual reality of it, and these people have been waiting for food for probably 3-4 hours, and the food might come at irregular times, and there are just so many logistical issues like that. That's just one example. But even any other solution you might try to think of, you can immediately start thinking of like potential negative consequences that might occur as well, like negative side effects. So it can be really hard to try to think of a solution that you think like actually makes a positive impact in as many ways as possible. And I think one takeaway for me was that as long as you're making some sort of marginal difference in the positive direction, then you're doing something for good, and you should be proud of that. You can be pretty easy to feel paralyzed by, I guess, all the different sides of the equation, but just do something, and that's good enough.
This class has changed the team's outlook as both business people and engineers.
I mean, I think it's this class was life-changing as a sophomore. I think you come in freshman, sophomore year, and you're taking your GEs, you're taking your major classes, and everything's about theory. Everything is about studying, getting a good GPA. And this class really, shook that out of me immediately, because I went on the first trip. So, first semester, sophomore, being able to see those things. I'd never been out of the country before, and the fact that that was my first experience was, it was shaking. And at the same time, it made me realize that there were so many things bigger than the curriculum I was learning. And yes, the curriculum is important. Yes, the lessons are important. But I think what's so exciting is it's made me realize how many opportunities at USC there are to take these skills and get in spaces where you're just making things and applying it immediately. And you don't necessarily have to wait. And I think in general, the idea of social entrepreneurship is so exciting as a college student, because you can kind of front these risks because you're still in college and you have a little bit of padding. And what better way, to capitalize on that opportunity than to make things that help people. So it's been really exciting for me.
Definitely. So I was accepted into this course as a sophomore, and I wasn't really sure if I should apply for this class when I first saw the description. I thought maybe they'd offer it in future years. I wasn't sure if I was necessarily going to have the skills or be able to contribute to a team in any sort of meaningful way, especially just in the biomedical engineering curriculum. I had just gotten into my BME classes, and then I wasn't really exactly sure how I could apply these skills to something that wasn't exactly BME. But then the fact that this course, I was accepted into it and had this opportunity really speaks to what I think the uniqueness of USC engineering is that these applications of these skills, I figured out how to do it. There's always been instructors that have been encouraging me to use my skills in innovative ways, and such a unique and opportunity to have incredible global impact at any age and with any kind of interdisciplinary team has really been what I'm going to take forward from this course.
I guess speaking as an engineer, taking this class has been so formative, and it's been such a great experience because we are working with people from such different disciplines. I kind of wanted to just add on what Spence was talking about, how a lot of classes that you take at USC are focused on theory, and it's the same in the computer science curriculum. There's a specific class that most juniors take called CS 310 that's meant to teach you about how to create software in an agile process and in kind of a startup way. But when you actually take that class, you don't really have a stake in learning those skills, how they should be learned, and you kind of do it for namesake. But taking this class and working on Duet, we've been able to transfer what we're meant to learn in a class like CS 310 and actually implement it in real life. And taking this class, I feel has been a much better learning experience. Personally, I can't speak for everyone else, but I think that coupled with the fact that such a problem that we're trying to solve with Duet, it's not just an engineering problem. It's a business problem. It's a design problem. And I've been able to learn from, my teammates about things that I would have just never come across in my engineering classes. Like Spence and I talking about human-centered design and what's the best way to get people to donate through a digital interface, talking to Michael about what our business plan really should look like and how nonprofits can work. And, just like leaning off of this incredibly like diverse team has been really, really cool as an engineer. And it's been refreshing to step outside of the lecture hall and see these things in action.
I mean, I think the wonderful thing about, the best predictor of, future behavior and future performance is past behavior and past performance. We are, more capable to take on the next challenge, the next interdisciplinary, complicated challenge, because we have been doing it for the last year. And, I think there's a clear and obvious and probably measurable value to what we're doing here. And, I've learned equally much from, speaking to engineers, as, Raghav says, he's learned from, one thing I learned is all the stereotypes about engineers are completely accurate. Well, no, I mean,
and vice versa.
I mean, this is something that I think all of us will continue to do in some form or another in our future careers. More often than not, I'm going to be sat in a room with people who know things that I don't, and I know things that they don't, and we're going to be trying to put our minds towards something, and I'm lucky enough to have done that before. Things were not all as different, or all these problems aren't as different as people maybe make them out to be. You can get better at doing this kind of thing, and I think we have gotten better. Compare our meetings now to our meetings a year ago. It's radically different. It's radically more efficient. We're getting things done quicker, easier, with fewer roadblocks. That will continue long into the future.
While the team has changed throughout the year, they have had few problems working together and across disciplines.
Yeah, so it was interesting. We actually had a little bit of a different team first semester. So we have actually, Michael and I are the only people who are working on Duet that were also working on Duet last semester. And so we just actually, Spence transferred from a different team within this course, and we got Raghav and Lucas for just this semester. And honestly, it has not been difficult to work with this team at all. I think coming together, we already had the idea, was kind of coalesced, and moving forward on that, it was a little bit easier because we did have this vision, and we were able to kind of the vision definitely changed over the semester, but having that kind of guiding principle, I think, made it a little bit easier to work as an interdisciplinary team. But definitely that first kind of scramble of the interdisciplinary team, where we had 2 biomedical engineers, a business student, I believe a health policy student, and then somebody from the Irvine and Young Academy. It was very interesting, and that was the part of the course too that was very challenging, as it was come up with an idea. There wasn't a specific problem. It was, here is human-centered design, here's the refugee crisis, here are global partners that you can speak to, and then obviously about half of our team went on that first trip. Now find the solution. And kind of moving from classes where it was, if I was in a team of biomedical engineers and we knew we were going to do something with vascular engineering, very easy to find problem statement, kind of, it's easy to iterate within that space, but with such a big problem and with so many different viewpoints and so many different areas of expertise, it was a challenge.
While the issues Duet confronts are large, they try to focus on the people their product might impact, which makes their goals more attainable.
I think so. The term for these types of problems that's commonly used is wicked problems. So
Sounds right.
Yeah, exactly. So problems that are so infinitely complex that you don't just solve them. And I think our instructors did a pretty good job of introducing this course as that. So it was kind of exciting to know that we didn't have to solve the refugee crisis. It's not a variable. It's not X. You don't just, move the equation to the side and figure it out. No, it's a very dynamic process of going through the human-centered design process. And I think the goal of this course was mostly to produce a solution that, yes, produced a positive benefit, but also produce a solution that the entire way to get there was done through empathy in a way that really prioritized the people that we were helping. And that was really hard. But I think when you go through that process, when you're always prioritizing those people, you produce something that is going to produce that net benefit. And, when we went back to Lesbos the second time, we were able to start testing them on the people that we had talked to first semester. And I think like setting that very reasonable goal of, something that is made for these people that you spent so much time learning about was something that was ambitious, but also like very accomplishable with our skills. And I think we're all really proud of the solutions we've been able to engineer.
In this sense, human-centered design thinking drives Duet.
To kind of start it out, I think it's the element of like human-centered design thinking that I was kind of talking about earlier. Raghav can speak to it, but he's currently, doing a social entrepreneurship design class, and that's also the philosophy that's at the center of it. And I think that's what kind of differs it from these competitions where you just pitch and your goal is to, produce the biggest metrics. It's make something that is so invested in the people you're making it for that like people can't deny that it is good for those people. And I think that's where a lot of the fulfillment comes from for me and a lot of the other students in the class.
Great, thanks. Do you want to speak about that a little bit, Rob?
Sure. I think maybe just backtracking a little bit when you talk about how, entrepreneurship is something that there's a platform for at USC. And I think generally, like, when you look at California and you look at the tech sector, both in Silicon Valley and even Silicon Beach, it can sometimes feel a little bit maybe even disheartening to see that a lot of bright minds and a lot of money is being used to solve problems that are pretty insular, actually, and problems that only really affect like a small subset of the population, usually wealthy, usually like has the resources. There aren't things, there aren't resources, there aren't ideas being piled onto the sorts of problems that this class is focusing on, the sorts of people that this class is focusing on trying to help. And I think at least for me, being a computer science student and maybe for a moment trying to reject sort of this normalized view of what tech can be. It's more than just a social media platform. It's more than just a way to get people to click more ads on the internet. This is something we're trying to build to help real people. And that's why the social impact aspect of this class has been so exciting. And I really hope that more conversations about kind of social entrepreneurship can be embedded into the engineering curriculum at USC, because these are the types of questions that aren't really being asked in your standard lecture hall on your standard final paper. And yeah, I'd definitely like to see more of it happen. I think this class is like a great step in the right direction, but more of it needs to happen for sure.
Yeah, and I think kind of this class being here for us and catching us while we're undergrads too is giving us this opportunity and these resources to work on social innovation is really cool, because I have that same thought of, the what biomedical engineering can tend towards is innovating for the sake of innovating for any sort of marginal benefit in human health. But having this course kind of be a counterweight to that in the sense of a very early look at how like these interdisciplinary ideas and these resources can come together to create a solution that can really have lasting impact and like transformational impact is super cool to see how those skills can translate.
If you want to get involved, go to giveduet.org and that'll give you a very good idea of what we're up to. You can follow us on our progress, and if you want and you like what we're doing, you can donate to one of our partner families.
And that's about it for this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in. And remember to follow us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as always, fight on.